Okay, I'm just waiting. We have Hala Ghanem, she's a Jordanian in the UK. Welcome on board. We have Abdurrahman from Doha, Qatar. He just graduated as a city planner, and he actually. Ghanem, she's a Jordanian in the UK. Welcome on. Sorry for that. So he just graduated as a city planner, and we are looking forward. He's looking forward for this talk. Welcome on board, Abdurrahman and Hala or Hala. And I'm gonna share now the YouTube link with you guys. So we have Yazan Jazin from Jordan working in Germany. Welcome on board, Yazan. Yazan has been one of the people that I know in our university, Kamal. So welcome.
My student.
Yeah, he's an amazing person. Welcome on board, Yazan. We have Sausan as well. She is Sudanese and she is an architect and university lecturer. Welcome on board.
Welcome.
Okay, so we have 1 more minute to go, and then I'm going to start off by introducing you, the hub, and the talk, inshallah. We have Noor. Welcome on board, Noor. Noor, she's an architect from Qatar as well. We are pleased to have you all with us today. I think it's going to be a very insightful one, and we are looking forward to sharing Kamal's thoughts today. Board, we have Okay, so we are going to start off now, Kamal. It's already 7:30 here in Doha, and good evening, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. And you are safe in your home. Today we have with us in episode 2 of Architecture's Entertainment Tonight, spatial planner and former national spatial planning consultant, Mr. Kamal Jalouqa. For those of you who don't know, Mr. Kamal has been a previous lecturer at the German Jordanian University. He taught spatial planning, urban planning, and he actually taught many courses at the German Jordanian University in Jordan. He is currently writing a book about smart cities, and he will be publishing it in 4 languages, in Turkish, in Circassian, in Arabic, and English. And he just actually managed to finish one of his papers with a Turkish magazine regarding water management and actually water management and the world after Corona regarding urbanism and diplomacy. And you can also know more about that in the saved profile that I shared with you in the chat. So Kamal, just for you to know, the Architects Hub is actually an NGO. And what we do is actually we bring in people from different backgrounds and people who are architects or urban planners or even in the field of architecture from different backgrounds and from different countries. And we prepare actually weekly hub talks, mainly to tackle issues that are related to architecture or around this domain. And we have now a huge contributors and audience from Qatar and from outside Qatar. And we do something called the Hub Talks every Wednesday, and we just actually launched the Architecture's Entertainment Tonight. So for everyone who doesn't know, you can always join us as members from all around the world, and I will share at the end of this discussion about the Architects Hub if you'd like to join us. So for everyone, welcome on board. And Kamal, please let us know first as a start who you are, who is Kamal Jalouqa, just for the audience to engage with us.
Well, good evening, everybody. I'm a city planner mainly. And why I became city planner is has a story with it, actually. When I was a young person at high school or before, I was living in a small town called Hostess near Amman, in the housing of the cement factory there. And in the evenings, the whole area was abandoned. About maybe 2.5 square kilometers of land. And me and my brother, wandering around and enjoying every tree, every piece of stone, every digging, every piece of equipment, whatever is there. And probably that gave me a kind of attachment to land, how it is developed, or to nature. And when I finished high school, I said, what shall I study? I said, I will study mechanical engineering because I was in a cement factory. My dad was working there. Maybe I will also work there. But I didn't know about city planning. I didn't know that there is a specialization called city planning. I went to Turkey to start my studies. And I spent 1 year learning Turkish and applying some schools to improve my mathematical skills and physics and astronomy and things like that. Then I met a fellow who happened to be my relative. And he told me about this school, the Middle East Technical University. He said they are teaching in English and it's a very good school and it's an international school actually. And I asked him to give me the catalog of that school. And I got the catalog and looked into it and found that there's a specialization called city planning in a department called City and Regional Planning, which is part of the Faculty of Architecture. I said, this is the one I'm going to specialize in. And that's how it started. Actually, being a multicultural citizen of Jordan, of Circassian background, and being in Turkey and knowing who lives in Turkey and what is happening there, and how cities developed, and things like that, made me very eager to really to get into this specialization. After graduation, by the way, it took me some time to graduate. So, and my dad told me, God bless his soul, told me that I have 6 more brothers of yours. So how long is going to take this school of yours? At that moment, I decided that no more piastres I will be getting from my dad, and I never got. So I worked also at the radio house to finance myself as an interpreter from Arabic and Turkish languages, and a speaker. And life continued like that. And that was the beginning. But I am a lucky person, actually. I've been in this business now for about 40 years. And during these 43 years, actually, I was always lucky to be put in a front line to develop something which is useful for the kingdom, for Jordan. And at the beginning, I was put in a position after maybe about 8 months of starting work. I was head of a section of researchers. And I did something very weird at that time. The mayor of Amman used to say that the population of Amman is about 1.5 million. Mm-hmm. And we had no census going on at that time. It's in 1978. So I decided to implement what I learned at the university and to do an analysis of aerial photos with field surveys to determine what is the real population of Amman. And we got a figure, which is 720,000. I'm talking about Amman proper now. And the census came about 9 months later, 729,000. It was very accurate, actually. And this is one of the things I think a city planner can help in. You can take an aerial photo and nowadays a satellite image, and you can study it different ways and get some results. You can define population densities. You can find out the number of buildings, lengths of roads, the agricultural lands, water resources if there are, and climate change, and whatever comes to your mind, you can study these satellite images and come up with some identification of the problem. So I will continue with my stories if you have another question now.
Very interesting, Kamal, because you've actually showed us a very emotional side of your experience. I mean, something that we cannot read on your profile or on your LinkedIn. It's something very personal, and it's very nice to share because it actually can give motivation and inspiration to many of our audience and to the people in general.
Yeah.
So I thank you for sharing, because it's something that we cannot actually feel or sense or hear from whatever is written about you on the internet. So after
that's why I'm here in person.
Yes. Very honored to have you. So moving on, I would just like our audience to know, now that we have the settled number, I would just like you to know about the structure of our interview. The structure will be moving on, will be about the expertise and the specialization of Mr. Kamal Jalouqa. After that, we're going to move to COVID and spatial planning from his own expertise, because this is the subject he's going to talk on most and share his experience about, and eventually about his future endeavors and projects and the things that he's already published, which is his recent research. So off to my very intricate question, from your proficiency as an industrial professor at the German Jordanian University. By the way, Mr. Kamal, he actually gave me a lot of his advice and his experience back in my graduation project. And having said that you were an industrial professor, and the university obliges its students to study in Germany as an obligatory part of our curriculum, in what ways do you think students could be able to develop a visual understanding of their urban theoretical studies while studying or even traveling abroad?
Yeah, I always told my students that before they go to Germany and after they came back, they confirmed that my findings were partially accurate in this case. You will, first of all, you will learn how to cook a couple of eggs for breakfast, which you have not done before. And you can experience riding a bus or a train and traveling from place to another. You can also be out there on yourself, managing all your matters, or your whatever you are facing, studies or life or entertainment or cultural encounter or whatever. So it's a life experience to start with. Other than that, Germany is a developed country, highly developed. I've been there many times. And there you can see, by the way, we have one law in Jordan for spatial planning. In Germany, they have pickup full of laws for planning. They have standards, they have regulations, they have for everything. Everything is set up in a quite detail so it doesn't leave anything for coincidence or chances. It's highly developed as a society, as a government, and they are enjoying this development as citizens of Germany, and those who travel to Germany for work or study or just passing by as a tourist, they can enjoy life in a different way in Germany. Nature is very nice. The systems, the infrastructure are developed. The regulations are applied firmly.
How does it?
I want to compare something. Some person asked me today that we had an accident on the desert highway 2 days ago. And unfortunately, we lost 4 lives there. And people started talking about putting signage and putting fines on those who speed and whatever. I told them, yes, it is important to have all these things. But what about the human factor? In Germany, when you are on a highway driving, and an ambulance approaches from your behind, everybody leaves one lane empty for the ambulance to pass. In Jordan, if you leave the road or a lane for the ambulance to pass, some others will drop in and occupy that space, and they will create a mess. And not the ambulance, not everybody else can pass. This is something which is related to the human development factor of a society. And this is something, if you are lucky enough to, as a student, to notice and to benefit from, this is a great experience, I think.
True. I mean, our experience back in Germany was really enlightening, and it has opened up to a new perspective, and it broadened our horizon definitely, because we have seen a different side of planning and city planning, and we have actually focused on the user, as you were saying. I mean, the user is very important, and how lives actually matter and how we should take care of that. And this is something actually that's happening nowadays, and it's actually being reflected during COVID, how the user is very important and public health is also collaborating. And we'll talk about that shortly. So my next question, Kamal, so as a national spatial or a former national spatial consultant, or in general as a spatial planner, what do you think are the major challenges we are facing nowadays in developing countries? And how can we be able to improve our livability?
Sorry. Actually, I was the former national consultant for UN Habitat for some time. That's why it is former. So I prepared the inception report and tried to set the project on rail. Then I left and somebody else came in. That's why I'm former, but I'm not a former planner, actually. I'm an active planner, and I'm doing work for different agencies, different companies, and I'm trying to write something on the business of planning. So by this way, I'm a present planner, not a former planner. The planning in Jordan, Jordan has a unique situation. It is in the middle of troubles, political troubles. The Palestinian question, where we had about 700,000 migrants from Palestine in 1948. And again in 40 and 67, and even after that many times. And we have migrants from Syria, we have migrants from Iraq, Sudan, you name it. We have people from all over the place, all over the globe, actually. And that makes the Jordanian society a very diversified society. The city of Amman, for instance, was one of the Decapolis cities in the Greek times and before Christ, and it was abandoned after about 800 years until it was rediscovered or resettled by the Circassians in 1878. And from that from that time on, Amman was receiving migrants, and we're also receiving a high growth rate because the population is young and the health system is developed or developing. It's better than other places in many ways. Literacy is very high, almost about complete. So Jordan is unique in that respect. And being in the middle of all these unprecedented changes in population and economic and social conditions and political situations, and having a population which is mainly forced to come to Jordan, and this kind of situation has affected Jordan quite enormously. And planners really cannot work in a comfortable situation in this case. If you, let me talk about my own experience in planning. When I started first, I started in regional planning project. This was this was the Amman Balka urban region planning or plan. And this plan, after we prepared it and we submitted it to the government, you open the first page and it says as follows: this is not a plan. This is a plan for planning development. So probably we, as planners at that time, discovered that we are reinventing the wheel, and we are starting something which never existed before in the kingdom. Because what we were talking there was a level of planning above the what we call zoning and local planning. We were talking about comprehensiveness. We were talking about deriving an urban policy, a regional policy for the kingdom, and a spatial policy for the kingdom together with and this regional plan followed a concept. It was assisted by University of Cornell and University of London, DPU, the Development Planning Unit. The approach they used in this plan was the basic needs approach. So we took housing, we took transport, we took water, we took electricity, and we took telecommunications and other infrastructure, agricultural land, the environment, protecting the environment, all these basic needs of the human community were tackled in a comprehensive way. That what we needed is to develop these. Then we had another plan for the northern region of Jordan. That plan followed a different approach, which is a growth rate approach, the growth poles approach. That we need to create some growth poles in the north of the country to re-attract the population back to the areas which they used to live in, and for that reason. By the way, Amman area was developing at 5.8% per annum at that time, before we started the regional planning efforts. At the end of the planning efforts, and after 2 or 3 years, this has been dropped to 2.3%, which is about the normal growth rate.
Wow.
Now, why did this happen? Because what was set in this plan as objectives to create growth poles in different parts of the kingdom was apparently a beneficiary approach, and two universities in Irbid, they created one university actually there in a place near the town center. Then they bought a piece of land, or confiscated a very big piece of land, to transfer this university to the new land with a new campus. And they asked a Japanese architect to develop the campus master plan. Then it took them some time, and the old university developed and the new university also developed. So we had two universities in one city. And that was a good start. After that, people didn't need anymore to come to Amman for work, for education, for health services, or whatever. So the population, internal migration to the capital city was reversed. And this was a success story in the Jordanian case, actually. Many countries couldn't do that.
Yeah, I mean, we face a lot of challenges, and especially with migrants and the population increase that is unexpected or unprecedented, as you mentioned, especially in Jordan. So this is something that, as you said, it's a case study that could be a lesson learned a lesson learned, or a case study that we can reflect on, because we face a lot of challenges just like any other countries around the globe. So that's a very interesting share. Now, for our audience to know, and for you, Kamal, I'm going to share my screen now just to take a small interlude with our usual pick and tick. But this time we changed it. We're going to ask Kamal to provide us with 3 of our pick and ticks, starting off with our first one, which is, just let me share it first, Kamal. So Kamal, we would like you please to share with us one of your favorite quotes, or a quote.
Okay. I'm going to tell it to the first time. This is not something I have said before, and I'm going to share it again. What I would share in this respect is that Jordan has very great potential to create its own policies in urban planning, in social and economic development. Mm-hmm. So this potential is obviously known to others. That's why we have a stable state in Jordan, and that's why we are one of the countries which organizations like the World Bank and the other international aid organizations feel quite happy to work with us.
So this is your quote. Actually, it's a nice thing to share for the first time with us, Kamal. Thank you for sharing. We always.
Okay, this is the first time I'm saying this.
Well, you're a proud person. So we thank you for that, and thank you for sharing your thoughts. That gives us a good platform for you to share your thoughts for the first time. So off then, we're going to move to the second part of our interview, and this is the most important part, which is COVID and its influence on of course, on urban and spatial planning. So, Kamal, off with my fourth question. As we all know, this pandemic has been an unprecedented event. So it's something that's not expected, that has contributed to change our lifestyle. So what are the major lessons learned from your own perspective that we have learned from this pandemic?
Yes, the first time I was listening to the news about COVID and that it's going to be a pandemic, I thought this is going to change our lives quite a lot. because historical experiences tell us so. Whenever we have a pandemic, we have migration, we have economic failures, we have unemployment, we have health problems, and we have people trying to survive and whatever is available to them. So things change quite enormously after each pandemic, which has taken place throughout history. I am a Circassian, and my nation has lost the war to prevent the invasion of its country because of a pandemic of cholera in 1820, which is sustained for 20 years. And during these 20 years, we lost almost everything. We lost our means to fight against the invaders. And this is something which took place in the history of my nation, and many other nations also have similar things. Now, people behave reactively, actually. When you have a pandemic and the policymakers come up with an idea of social distancing, for instance, people start talking about, let's go back to the villages, let's build our houses not as 5-story houses, but as houses with with a garden or whatever. Actually, these are not doable things. What is doable is to benefit from this pandemic and to try to implement doable changes. One of the doable changes is, fortunately, working from home, for instance, and education, remote education. And people have been talking about this for maybe 10, 15 years, but nobody thought of implementing it in a stable way. The pandemic forced us to do so. So now we have a proven case of working from home, and we have continued our education system. Not only us, all the world did that, and we have known what we need, what is there to develop, what lessons we can learn from this, and can this be the normal life order in the coming years, even after the pandemic. So people, if we divide the people who are going to the office into 2 shifts, one shift works at home for one day, and the other shift comes the other day. Then we have half the traffic on our roads. We have half the fuel consumption. We have many things become much cheaper for us as families and as the government. And we may come up with ideas with the using of devices and electronic communication systems and smart city solutions. We can have a different society, but with the same buildings, with the same road system, without having to rebuild the cities once again. I would refer to something which took place in the United States, which is, they call it suburban movement. People were encouraged to move from the crowded city centers to suburbs. But who was the factor behind that movement? It was the car manufacturers and those companies who were building the highways. They wanted huge numbers of people to buy these cars and huge number of people to use the highways and pay the toll when they pass over it. So one sector, the economy benefits, of course, in general from this, but after a while you discover that you have had too many private cars and you have to go back to your basics. You have to go back to public transport. You have to go back to the city centers, which became, ghost towns in the middle of the cities. This happened in New York and other major cities. In Detroit nowadays is abandoned. All over the place, you can find only cats and dogs, and you can find no people. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Actually, that's I mean, going back to your basics and learning from the pandemic, not actually redoubting what you have, rather than thinking, rethinking, or redesigning, or replanning, and taking the existing and building on it is something that we can actually take as a lesson learned. Definitely, Kamal, I agree with you. So, are there any future?
I will never, as a planner, do something which is undoable. I will do something. I will do something. I will propose something which is doable at least cost, which is beneficiary to everybody or almost everybody, which doesn't require a revolution to to attain or to develop. And this is life. But there are many solutions that you can think of in this respect.
That is actually very interesting. I'll take that as your quote, actually, Kamal, because this is very interesting.
You don't need a revolution to do planning.
True. But people revolt. People like to revolt. I mean, I believe it's in our human nature. So, off to my next question, Kamal. Do you think that there are any future considerations that regional and spatial planners should consider when designing future master plans after COVID? I mean, of course, we should learn from it, but are there any considerations from your own perspective that we should actually take into consideration?
Actually, taking this pandemic situation as a starting point, you cannot make a plan which is exotic and makes lives of the people in a much different way. You can do minimum things because the economy is getting down in this situation, and nobody can afford these exotic ideas to implement. But there are many things which we can do which would make life easier. For instance, the Greater Amman Master Plan, which I was honored to be the head of in 1983, I started, and we delivered the plan in 1987. And in 1987, we also suggested that the Greater Amman municipality should be created to implement the plan in a different way and more comprehensively conceived way. In this plan, we tried to take everything in a package way. The infrastructure, the environmental considerations, land. Actually, we had been zoning land like crazy in the 15 or 20 years before 1987. And we could settle about 10 million people in these zoned lands with the regulation which is written on the zoning plan itself. And the population of Amman was barely about 1 million, no, 1.25 million. And by the end of the plan in 20 years, we estimated that the population will double to about 2.5 million. And we still have land zoned to accommodate 10 million people. So what to do with it? The plan then suggested that we should do a concentration or densification of the population. Let us allow what is written on the zoning plans, that buildings should be developed as 4-story buildings and should be serviced properly. And this is what we did actually, which was a success story, another success story, I think. But there were some gaps we couldn't do. We couldn't make the government of Jordan or the municipality of Greater Amman do properly, which was, there is a article in the planning law which says every land which is zoned as garden or park could go to its owner if the government or the municipality does not confiscate it within 7 years, and the municipality didn't, compensate, didn't buy these lands within the 7 years, and the people reclaimed their lands and they got them back because there was no need for them. The municipality had no actual need within the 7 years coming to establish these parks, because it was park all over the place. It was agricultural land, and there was no need to establish these parks. So we ended up with densely populated areas without any parks. This is something which is a failure of the planning system, I think.
Oh, but that's impressive. I mean, sometimes when you learn from your experience and you look at it after you design it or you plan it, it's a totally different perspective than when you actually start on something or at the beginning of a project. I mean, designing a whole thing about public parks as a planner, that would have been hard.
Yes, because as planners, the municipality of Greater Amman has 23,000 workers now. Maybe only a dozen of planners are there. The rest. So decisions are not in the hands of the planners.
Hopefully, we will have more awareness in the future. I hope for that. So this is a really nice also story that you can share as a reflection of what I've asked. So moving on, I'd like to ask you about a specific part of planning. From your expertise in transport, the transport impact assessment, and from this viewpoint, can you share your insights on how traffic infrastructure will respond to users' needs in the future in relation to public health and in relation to public health emergencies or to any future pandemics?
Yeah, actually, I have a special love to transportation myself. My university in Turkey was having some troubles, political problems were in Turkey, and we had to stop our education for 1 year, and sometimes more, sometimes less, several times. I used these times to work for the transport companies. I worked for the airline as a dispatch officer, and I was planning the trips of the aircrafts of Royal Jordanian with my colleagues as a section. And I worked as a technical draftsman and assistant to the project engineer in the construction of the Hattiya Aqaba railroad.
Yes.
That was in 1974. For about a year, and then I came back to the university where I finished as a school as a planner. Now, all the planning efforts which we have done included a transportation part. coming back to this question of what you asked about. Oh, you asked about the traffic impact assessment. Yeah, I was working for the government, for the city of Riyadh in 1997, 98.
Yes.
And the king, the present king, King Salman, was our boss at that time because he was the Emir of Riyadh. And someone came to me and asked me, said, can you prepare us some regulations for traffic impact assessment? I said, yes, I can prepare. I prepared the regulation, and it passed as a law. And the developers starting coming to the planning office where I used to work, and they told them, you have to do a traffic impact assessment. They went out to the town. No engineering office had that experience. They said, we couldn't find anybody to do it, so what can we do? So someone came to me from the backyard and asked me to prepare one or two of these traffic impact assessment until things start going in. So I started to work for private consultants as well to prepare the traffic impact assessment. What is traffic impact assessment? If you have a project, an architectural project, let's say a mall, some hundreds of people and thousands of people on certain days would come to this place with their cars or with the public transport, or will they walk there, whatever, and they will create a mess of traffic around this place. So when anticipating this project, when devising the project, the concept of the architectural project, you have to have this traffic impact assessment. See that if this project starts full operation one day, what would be the impact of it on the traffic or the city traffic? And this was the idea behind it. And later on, we had this for Amman. I prepared for traffic impact assessments for 2 or 3 major projects when I worked for Sigma Consulting Engineers. And the law was passed in Amman, and I don't know what happened after that, because when you design a project, you have to consider the traffic impact of it.
Yeah, but what do you how do you think that traffic infrastructure, how will it respond to users' needs in the future after this pandemic? I mean, how will traffic infrastructure take into considerations the users' needs as a public health emergency that will emerge in the future?
Yes, I will tell you what I see now here in Turkey. I'm living in Turkey. I'm stuck here. I came here to visit, and I couldn't go back, actually. And because of my age, I was forced to stay home. So I lost my muscle volume. I gained more weight. So I'm a little bit in health trouble. What the government thought here is that public transport vehicles should be operating at half the capacity. Mm-hmm. So if the bus has a capacity of 50 people, it will have to travel with 25.
Wow, so half.
Some of the seats will be left empty. And the intercity buses, they solved this. They charged the people twice the price, the normal price, and they only took half the capacity of the bus. This is one way. Many countries in the world did similar things, actually. But how can this be a doable solution in a country like Jordan and in places where the regulations are, you know, kind of permissive in a way? I don't know, but one way of avoiding the spread of the pandemic is to have less people in the space, the available space. And they have to have the masks on their faces, and they will have their temperature, body temperature gauged every time they enter the place, and things like that. But these are regulatory measures. They don't really reflect on the planning. What reflects on the planning is if certain industries take a decision that half of our employees should work from home, then you have half the density on the streets. You will have half the traffic density, or have half the population density, and you can implement whatever solution you are thinking of to minimize the density of the people in the confined places, especially. This is one thing. The other thing is if you put people in the houses for lengthy times, then they will lose muscles. They will have to go out and have some, physical practice. And our roads are not very inviting for the pedestrians. And as I mentioned before, we don't have these the neighborhood parks available for people to practice. By the way, in Turkey, here, they have a gym in each public park. It's an open air gym with about 20, this equipment where you practice different muscles of your body.
Yes.
They have 50,000 of them spread all over the place, all over the country.
We have something similar actually here in Qatar, which are spread
Yes,
around.
many places have them. Yeah, but I don't think we have any in Jordan until now. We have places where we can jog. We can have, for instance, I think it is worth telling the story of the Greater Amman Park. Actually, this is the park, the park on the way to the airport on the right and left hand side. One day, the mayor of Amman, whom I was working to, called me to his office and said, "أعطيني بشارة يا Kamal." You know, bshara is if someone tells you a good news, you have to pay him or her some money or a piece of chocolate or whatever. I said, "What happened?" He said, "You keep saying that we don't have parks. And the government decided to give us a land for a park." I said, "Where is that land?" He said, "It's behind Abu Nsair in the area, between Zarqa and Amman." I said, is it already planted?" He said, "No, it is not planted yet. We will plant it." I said, "When will the trees grow?" It will take 20 years for the trees to grow so we can use them. And that by that time, you will not be here and I will not be here. He said, "What are you suggesting?" I said, "I have a better place." And at that time, the road to the airport was not open yet. And people didn't know about this park, that there are about 2,800 dunams planted with trees. and the trees are 30, 40 years old, grown up, and it's a public land. Nobody knew about it because it was occupied by the military for some time. And I investigated about that land and discovered that some people in the government are thinking of dividing it into 10 dunum each parcel to put a palace for one of the ministers. I said, no. The people of Amman are looking forward to having this land. I brought the aerial photography and showed it to the mayor, and he said, I never knew about this land. Can they give it to us? Who owns it? I said, the government owns it. And he asked me to go to the government and investigate about this. And I went to the Minister of Agriculture and convinced him that this land should be given to the city of Amman. And that was the Greater Amman Park, al Kundum. It was given to the municipality in a big celebration in 1984. Yeah, that's one of the stories.
That's interesting, Kamal. I mean, I would like to thank the audience for staying with us. I mean, we're going to just extend the time a little bit longer. We have 2 more final questions. But before we move to the last part of our future endeavors with Kamal, I'd like to move on to one of our pick and ticks again. So this time I would like to share my screen once again and ask you to provide us with
a quote
for future generations. So we actually had 1 question from the Q&A, and I'm going to share it with you shortly. So can you please share 1 advice for future generations from your own perspective?
This is an advice I am giving to the population in general, Amman, especially the younger generation. Mm-hmm. Try to feel that you own this city. You are the real owner of this city. You are not just an occupant. You are not just a passerby. And try to organize yourself with the family members, with neighborhood members, with people who share thoughts with you, and discuss the problems, the urban problems which are faced in your neighborhood, in your street, in your whatever place. And this will be a change, actually.
Nice.
For future. It's a planning from below, I would call it.
That's really nice, Kamal. I mean, we always say that the future generations are always the roots of our future and future success and our future visions. So they should work to be the change.
Well, that's much better than having argila in some places.
That's actually very true. So moving on, guys, to our last part of the interview, we're just going to head off to talk about the research that you've just published, actually, Kamal, which I will share the link to our audience in the chat. So Kamal is currently working on a research. He actually published his research paper with a Turkish magazine, and it is it's about developing water resources in Eastern Mediterranean region. So can you tell us, please, more about this paper and what was it about, please? I will share the link now with the audience.
Yes. Actually, when I started working on this paper, it was on developing water resources on the Eastern Mediterranean region. But later on, I changed my mind and I said that we have the corona pandemic.
Yes.
And we have water resources which will be highly affected by this pandemic in terms of resource, in terms of management, in terms of development, which is taking place. So I shifted my research into a different path. I finally got the paper written as and under the title the World After Corona, Water Management and Diplomacy.
Yes.
And this paper talks really about the setups which people in the different areas in general. I gave some examples from Jordan, but naturally. This situation is related to planning, urban planning, spatial planning. This is related to the resources, which mainly we have water in this case. And water has also many dimensions. It has the water use, it has the water availability for each household. Nowadays in Amman, water is available once a week, you know. In Ankara, it was also once a week before. Now it is available 24/7 and with good quality. And also water in Amman is at good quality. But the population growth is much higher than the anticipated figures. And we always have to find new resources for water. When we consider water as a basic need, not as a commodity. So my theme in this paper was that if we consider the water situation at the beginning as a resource available for everybody, so we build the infrastructure, we tried to provide everybody with water, then water becomes scarce, and you know, the different users of the water and providers will fight over the resource, and that's where we will have diplomacy between these actors. And at the end, we have to manage, because we don't have enough resources. We cannot make resources available for the population where they are. So we have to go to the what we call the demand management, which is managing the demand at the end of the system. People who consume water at a certain rate at the moment should be encouraged, should be you know, helped with the systems, with smart systems to consume less water. And when you consume less water, you have less water in your sewer system, and you will have, you need less capacity in your what we call the wastewater treatment plants. And the nature would benefit more because it is the final receiver of the water again. And some of the countries actually have this. They recycle the water. They use it. They send it to the wastewater treatment plants, and they treat it 100%, bringing it back to its original state, and they use it again, especially maybe for agriculture and gardening or whatever. I was once in Germany in 1993, I think. Yeah. And we were in a city of where they have this big cathedral, Cologne. Yes. We were in Cologne and at the water department. I asked him, what kind of problem are you facing? The principal there said, football games. I said, how football games? He said, whenever everybody is watching football, and when we have a halftime, everybody runs to the toilet, and the water demand, is tripled at that moment. We have to continue pushing or pumping more water at this more powerful pump, using more powerful pumps, and sometimes the system fails. See, this is occasional use of water because of a certain. Consider now that we are obliged to work from home. We will use more water during the day or whatever. Maybe we will need the system to operate in a different way.
That's really interesting. Yeah. Tackled beautiful topics about water as a basic need, and how actually we can sustain water in a very thoughtful manner, by which we can actually reuse it or take it to our benefit as a renewable, as a resource that we have and it's available. So that's really interesting, and I really urge you all to have a look at this paper. I already shared it in our chat. So after our yes, I already shared it, Kamal, for them to actually have an insight. And at the end of this talk, I will share Kamal's contact so that you can contact him as well directly. So for my last question, then we're going to take a Q&A from our audience. So guys, if you have any Q&A, please jot them down in the Q&A section. We already have 4 questions so far. So the last question is about your book. You are currently in the loop of publishing a book entitled about smart cities, and it will be issued in 4 languages: Circassian, Arabic, English, and Turkish. Why did you choose smart cities, and what is the book mainly about other than smart cities? What is it actually about, and why did you choose smart cities?
Actually, this book will be a theory of planning to start with. After 40 years of working in this field, I would like to share with my audience, with my readers, some ideas. And the reason why I wanted to publish it in 4 languages is a personal reason, because I am fluent in 4 languages. Yes. I used to work professionally as a translator. Yes. So I thought, why not publish the book at the same time with 4 languages written by the same author? And maybe this would be, I don't know, the first book in history in that case. And why I put Circassian as a language, maybe about a dozen of people would buy the book in Circassian, or some hundreds may buy it, and they would keep it on the shelf because they normally use other languages like Russian or English or Turkish or Arabic for scientific purposes, not Circassian. Is to put Circassian, my language,
yes,
abreast with other languages.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. Good reason, huh?
That is actually a good reason. I mean, why wouldn't you write a book that you are actually publishing in your own language? I mean, it's actually a pride, and it's sharing knowledge in your own language. What's more beautiful than that, Kamal, really? But yeah. Why did smart cities in specific? I mean, what's so special about, I mean, it's the new future. It's what we should actually look for. But why did you, as a planner, choose this topic in specific?
I think smart city as a concept is mistreated. Some people think that if we buy some gadgets and spread them around the place in our infrastructure and in our local governments and whatever, the city will be smart. No, the city will be smart if the people get smarter.
I fully agree.
If the people get, the proper way of solving their problems, they can use gadgets, they can use technology, they can use procedures which are developed for the information technology development. But technology cannot work by itself. It has to be augmented with smart people who would, decide what they need from this smart city concept. And there are many things which could be practical uses of the smart city concepts. I can give examples. Just many books are written about this these days, but mainly by companies who are developing the systems and merchandising the equipment which are used in the smart city concepts. Little attention is paid to the development of human resources, human ways of thinking, human ways of tackling problems of the urban area.
Very true.
So I think this book will cover all these.
That's very interesting, Kamal. Thank you. And we're just heading to our last part of our pick and tick, which is I will actually ask you to share with me. I would like you please to share with me your thoughts on one of the images that I will be showing you now. So I'd like to gather your insights on the following image, please, Kamal, which is this picture. What do you see, or what are your thoughts or your ideas about what
this is Central Park, New York?
This is actually,
Trump is building skyscrapers in the middle of it.
This is actually the European city, which was done by Le Corbusier. It was actually inscribed.
Oh, yes, yes. But yes, I know this place. Actually, having a central park is not a solution by itself. It could be good for the environment, for the people to go and have some walk around and, have, we need these places, especially if you have, for instance, a disaster, or God save us. You need these places for helicopters to land in and people to be gathered. This is a very needed solution for many countries, like the countries which have earthquakes, for instance. In Turkey, they have earthquakes quite often. And if you don't have these places, you are in trouble, actually. Now, I teach my students urban design at the German Jordanian University, and I use this only as one of the examples which could be offered. This is not possible all the time, but smaller solutions are more possible. In New York is a good example. I always show them a video from the lady who was the head of the planning department at New York, and who did solutions. Nowadays, every citizen of New York is 10 minutes away from a public transport station, from metro station. And this is one thing. And people can go on the bank of Manhattan and put their computers, laptops, and do some work while enjoying the scenery. And they would have their Wi-Fi services, and they would have recharging of the batteries of their systems. These are things which are doable and which our cities would need. If Le Corbusier lived these days, he would consider also the smaller options rather than the general plans and general parks or whatever.
Kamal, the best part about this evening is that you linked a lot of the questions into your own personal experiences and personal stories or narratives, which made it very much a planner's own perspective. So often we're going to move to our audience and their questions, and I'm going to start with one reflection which was shared by the founder of the Architects Hub, Umayma, when we actually discussed when we actually were discussing culture and the people and how we as planners can actually engage our users into our planning strategies. So she was actually very much amazed by the stories that you were sharing. And she appreciates the width and depth of awareness that planners have in regard to human behavior and culture. So this was just a statement. But as a question, we have a question from Ryan. Ryan is saying, I'd be interested to hear from you, Kamal, your general opinion on pandemic's impact on the real estate market, which is the residential, the commercial, and public sector. And will the pandemic influence how planners should reconsider land use and zoning planning concepts and associated policies and the economic strategies associated with land use?
I will start with a secret.
Okay.
My wife keeps telling me that we should sell one of the pieces of land we have. And she said, I kept telling you to sell this piece of land and purchase something for us, for our kids to enjoy. And now the prices are gone and you are not going to sell anything. So we are in trouble. I am in trouble personally in this case. And many people like me are in trouble.
Yes.
The prices will go down. That is for certain, because people will not have enough income to buy, and the banks will not be able to lend the money to them to use it in real estate. And one development in this case is that if you watch televisions and newspapers and websites, you find many, a big increase in advertisements of real estate offers. Like the apartment in New York, or a mall in London, or land for building near the city of such and such. Many advertisements have increased like flies around the web, and that gives you an indication that much offers are there and less demand.
And I don't know how it will be after this pandemic. I mean, I don't know if the demand will still be there, and if people will still be interested in real estate or buying new investments, and so on and so forth.
We will have midway solutions.
That's true. So after
we will have people will suffice with what they have at the moment. Yeah. We will have more space sharing between family members. We will have this demand on new development. And by the way, in Amman alone, we have 7,000, or was it 70,000 apartments which they are unable to sell. The developers have built them, and the market does not need them at this stage. And many countries, many big cities are facing the same problem. And this is one of the problems of the economic crisis, actually.
That's interesting. Actually, we have another question from Lena. Lena is asking about what would be your advice to young people who dream of becoming the city planners, and what is the thing that you enjoy most about this exciting and critical area of work?
We need more city planners. But if you go to the mayor of one city, he will tell you, no, I don't need city planners, not at this stage. They are a headache. They keep coming up with these theories. I cannot, face these demands, and I cannot do them because I am here to serve the population, different parts, the economy, the social, the stakeholders, the powers of the city, whoever is putting pressure on the mayors in the city. So planners planning as a profession should change. I think like, you know, the baqal in the street, baqal al-hara,
Yes. So mainly that.
planners should go to the basics. They should serve the population in different ways, and they can find ways of that. But the schooling system is not ready for that. I wrote a paper 3-4 years ago about spatial planning education and how it is related to the market. The market is changing, and this applies to all specializations, by the way. If you enter a university in the first year and you are expected to graduate after 5 years or 4 years in some countries, the profession which you have selected may not be in demand anymore after 4 years. And that makes us in seeking a more flexible way of thinking, but changing a university program would take 5 years at least. So to make the process of decision making work, and to say that we are going to have, for instance, like the German Jordanian University, we have specialization of architecture, and we have a specialization of graphic arts, and maybe some sub-specialization of filming. These are at the bachelorate level. And we have spatial planning at the master's level. But if the situation continues like this, maybe we will not have enough students for this. But we need more planners. I'm saying this, we need more planners. We need more flexible institutions to teach planning. I'm not sure how this can be done at this moment, but there are ways to do it.
Actually, Kamal, one of our, again, Ryan, he is agreeing with you, and he's saying that we need more politicians that will listen to town planners and proposals for sustainable and smart cities. So it's actually basically what you are saying. So often we have another question. From a planner perspective, this is from our audience, but I cannot recall the name. From a planner perspective, are there any future recommendations in order to deal with future pandemics such as COVID in planning of our cities? So I think we've covered this, but you can answer our audience.
If this gentleman or lady can tell me what pandemics are coming in the future, I would tell her what solutions we can suggest. We will never know.
Yes, that's true. So we have Muhammad Abu Amira. He's asking his question in Arabic. I will read it in Arabic and then I will elaborate on it. Or if you can answer
Muhammad, my friend, yes.
Yes, he's actually he's asking in Arabic. هل من الضروري البحث عن بدائل لإيجاد مساحات داخل الحارات بحيث يكون لكل حارة وليس بالضرورة لكل حي أو منطقة مكان لممارسة الرياضة أو التخطيط الميكروي من الأسفل للأعلى. And this actually translates into, is it necessary to search for alternatives to find spaces within lanes or within neighborhoods, or for all neighborhoods, not necessarily for every neighborhood or region, as a place or for practicing sports, and even taking micro planning from the bottom to the top. Actually, this is what the.
Yeah, actually, I welcome Muhammad Abu Amira. He's a friend of mine. He is the initiator of the Hara initiative in East Amman, where he works with the people who are living in these, low-income neighborhoods.
That's nice.
And works with them in many ways. To start with, they clean the place. They use it as a socializing place, the general place. They don't just use it as a place to pass by and go to their houses and close the door. They know thy neighbors. And they use the children repaint the walls, and they repair the staircases, and they plan something, and they organize evenings, meals in Ramadan, and things, very nice things. I tried to involve him with the academia. Actually, I called him to talk about this concept in one of our urban design sessions, and I thank him for that. He came and told us all his story, but I think there are still communication problems between him and the spatial planners at the municipal level, because he's talking about things which are not in their Bible. Nobody cares how you paint the wall, for instance. Nobody cares how you organize a public meeting in a neighborhood. Nobody cares about how you, they would repair the staircases when they have a demand, but they cannot ask the people to do the repair for themselves. There is a missing link between the people and the social workers like Muhammad himself, and the conceptualizing community like the academia. Like, I don't know, I wouldn't consider myself as a a name in this, but I tried in different ways to put these two people together.
Let's hope that this gap will actually vanish with time, because this gap actually leads to many more loss of demand from the people and not meeting people's expectations from our planning outcomes. So he asks again that this micro level lane planning, it also includes gray water systems, provided that a social solidarity system is designed to only gray water systems for each lane, I mean, to serve agriculture. Which we implemented with a warm initiative. So do you see this as a possible engineering problem, or as an architectural or engineering option?
No, I don't see any problem. Sweden is one of the richest countries in water resources.
Mm-hmm.
And in their rural areas, they developed a concept, they call it the dry toilet. The toilet that does not use water at all. Mm-hmm. And this is a toilet which redigests the waste and take and give it back to nature with the most healthy way. Mm-hmm. And this is an extreme example, but there are examples where you can use gray water, reuse it in different ways. For the gardening needs, for instance, there's a concept, by the way, which could be implemented in places like Amman, which is urban architecture. Urban agriculture.
Yes.
People can plant their food exactly, especially in the places, in the vacant lands which are between houses, or in the backyards, or whatever. And that would be of environmental benefit, that will be a health benefit, they can have physical activity, and financial, it will save them money.
Nice, very nice. Actually, that's very interesting, because this is a different part of agriculture that people can...
It is used, by the way, in many places nowadays, the concept of urban architecture, urban agriculture. Sorry, I keep mixing.
Because it's not actually very well known, but if people actually implement it, it would be a successful outcome, I believe. We have another question from Abdurrahman Al-Manna. You talked a little bit about the relationship between density and the spread of the pandemic in your latest article in the International Journal of Water Management and Diplomacy. So much of the public perception has become hyper-conscious of how density plays a role in the spread of the pandemic. Now, despite the environmental and economic benefits of densification, can we still expect the public support for densification in a post-COVID world? And how will this affect how planners go about building denser and healthier cities?
Actually, we as planners suggested that to densification of the city to prevent urban sprawl, to prevent that the city is growing in physical dimensions without any control. And I mentioned what problems we had later on. We discovered that the green parks and places for physical practice were not available. Even car parks are not available because in the law it says that every building which is zoned residential C, we can have one car for two apartments, and nowadays maybe we have two cars per apartment.
Yes.
Already, because we didn't have a public transport system that is effective. And the developers say that, okay, pay us the money. We can provide you as many parks as car parks as you need, because every car space costs 13,000 dinars in today's prices. And people are not willing to pay that extra money. So how can we solve this? This is a density problem, and it is related to the pandemic. It is related to looking at the future and changing the plan. But planners should never panic. That they say densification proves no good, so let's de-densify. Let's go to the agricultural lands and spread the city as it was spread before, and that would be the solution of it. That's not the case. In that case, we will have extra demands for providing the areas with infrastructure. We will lose agricultural land in Irbid, in Karak, in Amman, in Madaba, and people will be buying more cars rather than using the public transport. And students don't go to school on foot these days, They have to be transported by cars. It is like the United States. Because the suburban movement, every suburb consists about 30 or 40 or 50 houses. They cannot put a school there. So they are putting schools in central places and malls and other services in central places, and people have to go to them. And that's why the school busing in the United States is a public service. It is free of charge.
Very interesting, actually. So
Yeah.
this marks the end. This marks the end of our interview, Kamal. I would like to thank you, and we are very honored to have you with us. For our audience, thank you for bearing with us for an hour and a half tonight. Kamal, it has been a pleasure having you tonight with us with your unforgettable.
The pleasure is mine, Diala. I am very, very grateful to see one of my ex-students. I didn't teach you that exactly directly, but I was at the school, and I used to converse with you over many topics that interest you. And I am very happy to see you in this position, concerned about public opinions and taking these issues to the public arena using the opportunities provided by the internet. And thank you again. Thanks for the organization that you are representing. And I will be in your service all the time.
Thank you so much, Kamal. Thank you, our audience. In case you would like to contact Kamal, I have also provided his contact information in the link in the chat, and the link for him is also there. For those of you who don't know the Architects Hub, our link is also shared in the chat. And stay tuned for our next episode next Friday at 7:30. Thank you, Kamal, once again, and we wish you a safe and happy stay in Turkey. See you soon.
Welcome.
See you.
Salam.